Streaming now on IWTV. New Texas Pro. Check our schedule for all future New Texas Pro events, including the Texas Contender Series. Watch over 70 New Texas Pro shows anytime on demand. Featuring Stephen Wolf, Fly Death, Rachel Rose, and the Bounty Hunter, Brian Keith.
Hello and welcome to the latest Business of the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Poz from the Two-Man Power Trip. Of course, joining me is the doctor himself. The doctor is in Dr. M. Lavie Marg. How you doing today, sir?
Hey, John, I'm doing well. We've been talking about WoW sort of at the end of, every episode a little bit, just to note that, hey, their deal is coming up. Their renewal is coming up soon, since it's season by season in syndication on Paramount. But then there was this article on Variety that was insightful, but left a few things out. So I wanted to dissect that today, if that makes sense, John.
Yeah, definitely. Why go for it, if you will, because I know there's some Jeanie Buss news going out there. But what's going on with WoW, and do they have a bigger audience than perhaps we realize that they have?
So Women of Wrestling is going through a major growth spurt for its 5th season, which includes the league's first live broadcast and expanded on-camera presence from Jeanie Buss. A lot of people that have followed wrestling traditionally are kind of like, the owner going on screen. Season 5 will broadcast live from LA Live in downtown LA, anchoring WoW's marquee events as part of a broader live strategy. Co-owner and promoter Jeanie Buss will take on an increased role on camera as part of this season. Season 5 is personal for me in a new way. I'm taking on a bigger, more visible role, and fans are going to see a side of WoW they haven't seen before. I've spent my career fighting for women to be seen and respected in spaces that weren't built for us, and WoW exists to give women that platform in the ring and beyond. Women's sports are having a real moment, and this season delivers on everything we've been building towards. Let's see here. Okay, so this is an interesting statistic. It has a 93% audience return season over season, and its social following has grown 96% since season 1. So 93% audience return season over season. So I guess that means that the audience hasn't grown, right? It's decreased. The first 4 seasons aired in national syndication via Paramount Global content distribution. So really a rarity in terms of syndication, especially wrestling syndication, over the last few years, that it was formally syndicated, not somebody developing a hodgepodge network of, of different affiliates. And from what we understood as best as possible from the outside, it was a barter deal. Taking WoW live from LA Live changes everything about the experience. Bigger moments, bigger stars, and the energy of a live crowd that fans at home feel in real time. So, John, it's an interesting moment because it's such a visible promotion that you get through syndication. The last numbers that we had was over 200,000 people, maybe up to 300,000 capturing it. An older audience, right, on here in New York, it would be like Channel 55 WLNY, which traditionally has had like a lot of wrestling syndication over the years. Shotgun Saturday Night, Worldwide, that sort of thing. But Saturday night, Sunday night, filling in a nice gap, but it didn't really resonate with wrestling fans, and maybe that's something that they weren't necessarily looking to do. You didn't really see Jeanie Buss, certainly, or even David McLean do a lot of like pro wrestling media. We went through the process for quite a while and even got the word back that Paramount was saying, no, thank you, to allowing people to come on our show. I mean, Jeanie Buss could have done what she wanted, but generally that wasn't something that they were seeking, and something that I always thought about that, would be a good opportunity for them. You capture that mainstream audience. I know you like that, like having a reality star on television to, get a Paola Mayfield to get resonance in that way, or go on a daytime talk show. But it is pro wrestling, and to not look for a pro wrestling audience didn't exactly make sense.
I just wonder, though, they're keeping the same audience, that maybe a slight decrease, but it does seem kind of strong, no? Or like especially in this day and age, or is that not a great number?
Yeah, I don't have as much comparables, like, in terms of what would, you know, Law and Order or whatever it may be do in syndication, which tends to do well. But, for a late night, Saturday night and Sunday night compared to, pro wrestling, as we compare it to TNA, NWA, which is stacking up their audience, although that's on a Diginet. Whereas these tend to be like, a weaker over the air station in the market, but not Diginets. That tend to do well, 4 seasons of it. If it, with a big corporation like Paramount, a smaller division, if it wasn't doing well and it didn't make sense, it wouldn't continue. But, syndication, unless it's, actually, I don't even know if Dr. Phil has syndication anymore, but unless it's something, like that really resonates, popular daytime personality, which could last for several years and decades, from the past, then, getting a few years in syndication certainly, is a success.
One thing I noticed just in general in wrestling, whenever like the owner gets involved on TV, they become like they're definitely more interested, if you will. Like Dixie Carter becomes a character, then she's like all over the place. At first, when she was behind the scenes, she kind of like Jeff run the show and this and that. Then all of a sudden, she's a character. Maybe loving it and getting used to it. So Jeanie Buss is actually going to be a character on the show. So she's going to be like a gimmick, if you will, or is she going to be playing herself? Like what's going on here? Or is she going to be like the evil owner? Jeanie Buss. Like what? Do you have any info on that?
Yeah, it'll probably go through cycles. Not sure. I'm just like looking at like the type of brand which she's, obviously somebody in this type of position would want to manage well, that she's very into women's empowerment type of thing. So I think that she wants to be liked, amateur psychology, and, she'll probably be like that positive force on television. But, that could really like overwhelm an episode if it's not, managed correctly. And of course, like, she's the owner, but, the person in charge of promotion always wants to like, keep them happy, of course. So like, okay, Jeanie, whatever you want to do, you can imagine. I mean, obviously there's been long-term relationship here between Jeanie and Dave McLean and whoever that are managing this. So I think it would start out as positive, but maybe like, eventually somebody could be like, hey, you could be an even bigger star, be that evil owner. I think something where, there's been a lot of talk about this scene, even recently, that Dixie Carter moment where, you had the wrestlers sitting in the audience and you're sort of dressing them down, and, where sort of like reality meets fantasy or meets pro wrestling, then that's like a hard thing to recover from. Something that I always hated with WWE was when Vince McMahon would like call out all the wrestlers and they'd have to stand by ringside, and it just made them seem like, smaller than they are.
I feel like that was on purpose by him, right? It just seemed like that was like his kind of ego check. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to make sure you guys are in check. I'm running the show. I want everyone in the arena to know I'm running the show. That's what it just seemed like to me.
Yeah, like that was, it became more prevalent, right, in the ruthless aggression era.
Big time.
Imagine like, just, I mean, they could have been out there by that point as well, but like, imagine like in the peak of the Attitude Era, you had Stone Cold, The Rock, DX, Triple, all the big stars, and like it just makes them seem smaller. And then even a generation before, I mean, Vince McMahon wasn't, being Vince McMahon, but how much spotlight it would take away from like Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, Ric Flair, Roddy Piper to like be in that situation. You have to let the talent breathe. So Jeanie Buss does bring attention to things, and obviously, has kept it going, whatever the financials are, whether it's on the positive side of the balance sheet or the negative for all these years. And it's obviously better to have her involved than not. But you don't want to like overwhelm it, because like in most of the articles that are written about it, and one Wall Street Journal article quoted me once where I said it's something like it's not an expensive roster, kind of saying that they're not, like, I spoke to them for like 2 hours, and like it was like
of
one,
course, you take the
one
thing,
snippet that's in there, but you just don't want to like overwhelm the product. But like maybe for residents, like, yes, you're giving up syndication, but whatever they have. But it'll be interesting to see if it's only on like Roku or Tubi or YouTube, or, you know, the live thing, or there's something bigger. I mean, they have been on Vice for a number of years, very quietly, like a midnight slot, you know, midweek. No one talks about that. So maybe there's an opportunity there, but, you know, Vice, you know, is much lower profile outside of the dark side of the ring. But I think that would be a positive for them. From our side of the table, outside of us, really, no one talks about wow. John, did you see the Jeanie Buss, well, not her story, but it was like one step away now that the Lakers are sold again?
Yes, crazy. Bob Iger, of all people, former CEO of Disney, is kind of leading the charge there and buying them. $12 billion. What do you think about that?
Yeah, and is that Jared Kushner's brother? That's also, it was like a Kushner. It's like
Oh,
Iger and Kushner. So I was like,
oh, I
oh,
don't
okay.
know.
You know, in a funny story, John, I may have actually played basketball against Jared Kushner in high school.
Get
I would
out of
only,
here. Wow.
I know he was on the basketball team. He's about my age, and I would only play garbage minutes, but I was put in the last couple minutes. The thing I remember most about the game is that I did a running hook shot and it almost went in, and the coach yells out, "Lavie, we're still playing a game here."
Wow. Damn.
But that's an aside. But what's amazing about it, and I haven't read extensively about it, so, you know, everyone can let me know if I'm getting this incorrect, that the Lakers were sold last year, right, for $10 billion, and this is right 12 or 12.5 billion dollars. So you don't often see that, you know, turnaround. And the previous owner, of course, or, you know, making up the majority of it, however it's described, was the Buss family, of course, Jeanie Buss. So she's not going to cry for you know, needing money, but you know, that's a lot of money on the table. And obviously she's not just gonna like dump it into WoW, but probably if you combine WoW's money spent over the last 25 years, that's not 5% of or 3% or whatever it may be of the opportunity lost with the difference in the sale price.
So Joshua Kushner is the brother of Jared Kushner and the son of Charles Kushner. Joshua, who is part of the deal with Bob Iger to 12.5 billion, record-breaking 12.5 billion for a sports franchise, married to Carly Kloss, who's a supermodel. So look at the Kushners, and obviously your old friends from high school. Nice.
Yeah, from the New Jersey staples, you know.
Yes, Livingston, New Jersey. Yeah, my dad used to own a business in Livingston, so I know that town pretty well. I didn't know that's where the Kushners were from, though.
So the I read a really interesting, not to go too far down, but you know, whoever the patriarch is of the family, the Kushner family, really interesting story of, you know, he came here with nothing, and how he saved money. He would work a construction site, but he wouldn't go home except for the Sabbath. So he would actually sleep at the construction site to save the money. And,
Wow.
you know, once he had enough money, then he would invest it in real estate or starting his own businesses and kind of go from there. It's a hard thing to do now. You know, it's like one of those like stories that works in like the mid 20th century. That's like, how do you make things work today? Talking about the business.
Right. Damn, that's crazy. Thing about Jeanie Buss, though, last year it had it sold, it was 10 billion, right? And she's out of it, I think. This year it sold for 12.5. So does that mean that she missed out on $2.5 billion there?
Yeah, that's my understanding of it. Unless there's, you know, sometimes these lawyers are slick. Unless there's a clause of like, if you sell it, you know, within 5 years, then we get over and above the sale price, then we get X amount of dollars. But I don't imagine that she's getting that money. You know, sometimes these sports sales are unbelievable. I can't believe that the Chicago Bears might not be the Bears anymore.
If that's true, I think that's ridiculous. If that's true, that would be insane. They're like one of the longest running franchises ever in the history of the NFL. So that, I mean, would be absolutely crazy. I hope that's not true. That's
yeah, for branding, that would just be crazy. Like, I know when like there are Cleveland Browns again, right? But like the first time the Browns moved, it was sort of like a big deal. But it's the Bears, you know, that would just be like one of like the staple franchises. But I guess if, you know, LA teams can move or whatever, it's these incentives that we talked about with TKO, that people are looking for government money all the time. But John, should we talk about maybe what was the last Bushi Road financials that include New Japan?
I just wanted to make one more point about Jeanie Buss because I was looking her up. I thought she was a lot younger, to be honest, just looks wise. So it's not saying anything about one woman's age, but just complimentary. I didn't realize she's 64. I thought she was way younger than that, just by looking at her. So Jeanie Buss, I guess, has been around the block for longer than I even realized, because I was thinking about Jerry, her dad and stuff, being the owner of the team. So she's been around, obviously, longer than I realized.
Yeah, I guess the context of it, right? She was dating Phil Jackson for a long time. And I don't know, what magazine it was, but there was that, sexy photo shoot that she had with the basketballs or whatever.
Yes.
I mean, not saying I'm Googling her all the time. I just
Getting in trouble here.
I just came across that picture at one time, just learning more about her. But I guess, kind of in a very different way, of course. Dana White looks better now, in terms of maintaining himself. We talked about before, like his teeth, and, look, when you have money. So sometimes, not saying she's had any work done, but just when you can live a very healthy lifestyle, sort of like when people were showing Evad Sullivan. This is going like way off the rails, but Evad Sullivan, when he was 31 in the mid 90s, in WCW, people were like, he looked like he was 50 something. So, just age and how you're able to maintain yourself and all that sort of thing. So this is taking some interesting.
Yes. Yeah. I'm glad I brought it up. Now we got an interesting curveball there from Lavie. But what's going on with New Japan Pro Wrestling, Bushi Road, and their latest financials? Because I don't know. It seems like New Japan has kind of cooled off, even though in the States, when they were here not that long ago, they had a nice house.
Yes. So, it's interesting, a transition. Cyber Agent, which owns Cyber Fight, in terms of the financials that I've seen, doesn't necessarily break down their pro wrestling, just because there's so much of a bigger company. Maybe that they'll have absorbed New Japan, it'll be, resonate even bigger, so that they will report on it. But we have what's probably the final financial reporting of Bushi Road on that includes New Japan. Of course, we'll have Stardom as well. So 1,567 is increase of 132 in this quarter. And they reported, while revenue decreased quarter over quarter due to the major New Japan Pro Wrestling event in 3Q, performance continued to progress solidly. New Japan, Dominion in Osaka-jo Hall, the largest event of the first half, drew 6,890 attendees. A special broadcast was aired on TV Asahi's nationwide network. Stardom, Mizkan Fruits presents All-Star Queendom. The largest annual event held at Yokohama Arena drew a record-breaking 8,015 attendees, the highest in the organization's quarter. While revenue decreased, performance continued to progress solidly. Looking at a little bar chart here, this includes, their quarters are different, right? As you can imagine, we're not in the fourth quarter of 2026, but that's how it's listed in Japan. It's kind of slightly above the second quarter of fiscal year 2025, but below most of the last 2 years quarters. Now, they noted two things: the share transfer of New Japan, and that one is pretty well documented. But the Stardom one is interesting to look at. Positioning Stardom as a core business, integration into the live entertainment unit. In July 2026, the company conducted a reorganization of its business units, integrating and evolving the sports unit into the live entertainment unit. Consequently, Stardom will transition into a new growth phase as a business within the live entertainment unit, the core business of the group, by fusing with the group's strengths and know-how in live events, stage productions, and and the music business. Objectives of the business unit reorganization: concentration of resources on core businesses and the improvement of investment efficiency. In line with the optimization of the group's overall business portfolio, we reassessed the management resources within the sports unit and resolved to integrate Stardom, which demonstrates high growth potential and strong group synergy, into the live entertainment unit. By directly utilizing the existing infrastructure of this unit, we'll strongly promote the maximization of investment efficiency and the concentration of resources on our core business domains. That makes a lot of sense. They do, like, I don't know if the word would be like boy bands or whatever it may be. They have all these touring groups and that sort of thing, which would resonate, and transforming the Stardom brand into a live IP. We will fully commit the know-hows the Bushi Road Group has cultivated through numerous in-house IPs, including cross-media development, merchandise, the music business, and overseas expansion into Stardom. If somebody has the talents, or, sometimes in pop music, you could play little tricks with it, like, maybe somebody at Stardom has musical talents, or maybe a musical talent has the ability to transition into Stardom. We aim to enhance, and those are my thoughts, we aim to further enhance brand value by evolving Stardom into the traditional framework of pro wrestling into the ultimate live entertainment. Furthermore, hosting over 100 events annually, Stardom boasts the largest track record of live event operations within the group. We intend to feed this extensive event management expertise back into other content within the group, driving mutual growth and synergy creation across our respective IPs. I think there's a lot, that you can do there. Then they had an interesting, little image here in the financial presentation materials. Live mixed entertainment: continuously develop entertainment that integrates with live experiences. So for pro wrestling, it's pro wrestling tours delivering heat and power directly to various regions. We talked about the Schwartz-Wise cards, right, last week. Still not exactly sure what that is. TCG operations that produce the very venues for play, creating daily touch points through retail stores, events, and prize promotions, and IP expansion, merging music, concerts, and stage plays.
Interesting. They seem like they got a lot going on.
Yeah, I think, it's kind of mysterious, sometimes the Japanese promotions and what they work. But I think Stardom, if anything, it can be crossover just because of, featuring younger women. It's sort of like a popish type appeal, if especially in Japan, that they could be in the trading cards, they could, do the music, all that sort of thing.
When you're looking at are they doing any more U.S. shows though coming up, as far as New Japan, Stardom, any of that?
Yeah, I think what we'll start seeing is, a separation of New Japan and Stardom in terms of, touring together. That now that they're separate entities, obviously there's still relationships that will continue on because of the existing connections that they have, right? We saw the New Japan with stars with the this trading card game and so on, but I think that will be separate. In New Japan, let's see with their new owners how much they want to throw into the U.S. market. Again, we talked about Chicago, that there was opportunity there, but I think it's generally throwing good money, into bad, John. I think it's is it a 10-year story now? We could even go back 15 years with New Japan, right? They tried to book with Fat Frank, right? That didn't work with Jersey.
Yep.
Then, they had this basically a wonderful relationship with Sinclair. And then it kind of became a little bit bumpy, right? Because they started running the same markets and, that sort of thing. I didn't hear about any internal conflict, but then AEW came in, sort of took over the market, and then they got this relationship with the Forbidden Door, which is probably, I don't know what the rights are, and from what had been reported in the past, it was a rights fee, but just visibility wise, that's certainly been their most successful thing. And now they do shows in London together and so on. But focusing on the US market, depending on the cost, of course, of flying in talent and the opportunity cost of not running Japan, at that point, or pulling some talents to run in some of these other markets that may be running that 3 to 5 shows a year in Long Beach, in Chicago, maybe in New York, that sort of thing. Like, that might be viable, but certainly like not to run more than that. Just doesn't seem to make sense unless somebody wants to pay as like a North American promoter.
I just wonder, like with AEW and stuff, I know it's been kind of working out, but it's almost like if you're booking them so much on AEW television, then it's not special when they want to be on their own shows. You know what I mean? Like if, hey, they're on the AEW Forbidden Door, they're on Dynamite, they're on Collision. Oh, but also check us out, New Japan, coming to Chicago. You know what I mean? I feel like that takes the speciality out of it. You want to see those guys that haven't really been around. But you know what I mean? Like Okada's obviously not in New Japan anymore, but he was on TV so much for them, and then AEW kind of stole him away for New Japan. It just makes the guys feel less special to me.
Yeah, 100%. I think New Japan has to be realistic with the market. And it was interesting that Kadani, right, had said, like, who wasn't realistic, who said, once they got the deal with WWE, got the deal with Netflix, I knew that we could never compete. And it was sort of like, what were you thinking? Like, did you really think you could compete?
Yeah, not in the US.
Yeah. That was crazy. So, certainly if they thought they could compete there, maybe they thought, the war wasn't over with AEW. I mean, even though they weren't worried, but like in terms of like who can be number 2, right? If they were aspiring to be number 1, maybe like being part of a corporation and like, something that was fairly big in Japan, it like kind of skewed that thinking. So it just goes to show that, their understanding of the market, was certainly off. John, talking about markets, one thing that I've been thinking about is this NXT live show that occurred last night in Poughkeepsie.
I didn't even realize that. I know we had talked about it, but I didn't realize it was last night already. Damn.
Yeah, as I was looking, I didn't realize either. I was kind of thinking maybe this weekend or tonight or something as we're recording this, but it was August 13th. We don't have a final number from WrestleTix yet if we get that, but we did have maybe just prior, the day of, and interesting evidence here because they drew just 950, which is actually less than NEW.
Wow, so NEW beat NXT. I wonder what's up with that. That's interesting. NEW always does draw well. Not to say that they don't, but they always draw well. But you would expect, this is a WWE show here. This is NXT. This is this is the big times, if you will. They're on TV. They're on the CW. They're getting outdrawn by a local indie who does really, really good and has obviously a lot of good faith within the neighborhood there in Poughkeepsie.
Yeah, so that was wild in that way because once you sort of set up those routes, like basically it's sort of like if you're choosing between shows, with NEW you're getting the best. With NXT, like depending on how you think about it, obviously you're getting the best of NXT. You're not getting CM Punk being added, but there's those expectations. Those expectations that you'll get the best talent, but you sort of like with NXT, you might just announce it online or whatever. I don't know what NEW is doing, but I'd imagine that they're sort of getting out and getting local coverage and so on with it. Whereas NXT, it's just that like pure touring brand. Okay, sorry, I'm just see if I could send the link to our potential 9:30 guest while we're talking here. Sorry, 1 second.
Yeah, I know we kind of missed out on. We were going to even have 2 guests today to kind of unveil the curtain and reveal behind here, take the fourth wall away here. It just seemed destined to have 2, and now we're just possibly going to go with 1, which is fine, which is good. That's fine.
Yeah, I started getting greedy, John. After we did 2 last week, I was like, let's keep it going. Yes. It works well, but
I thought you were going to be like, let's go for 3. Let's try, but
Yeah,
Cool.
no, I know, and we'll talk about this at some point more offline. But I'm thinking with episode 300 coming up, kind of thinking about like people popping in and out. But
popping
we
out.
could make it
Okay.
like a
Yeah.
huge mess, or it could be fun.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. I just, you hope one shows up. I've been doing this a long time, as far as interviews and scheduling interviews, and sometimes people don't show up. They show up late. They don't get back to you. They get back to you a week later. Oh yeah, I thought it was. You know what I mean? There's been so much craziness.
Yeah,
It's
it
just,
happens. And John, I know you've done like probably thousands, at least 1,500 shows, right, at this point.
yep.
And even as a host, like, right, what happens like right before you record, one of your kids needs help or something
Yes.
breaks,
Yep.
an emergency late night work call, or whatever it may be, and you kind of go with the flow and make it happen. So that's why it's important, listeners, that you support us, get the word out, like, rate, review, share. You got to keep it going. If you have a business and want to sponsor things, let us know.
And I just want to throw this out there before hopefully the guest will join us here, to please go out there and support Joe Feeney. He's got a GoFundMe out there, Stand with Joe Feeney. You can see it on Jericho's X account, Sugar Shane Helms, aka the Hurricane, his account. I've reposted it on Two Man Power Trip. Blue Meanie has posted it. He will need some help with health bills and hospital bills and stuff. He was in the hospital, still was in the ICU, which I was looking up is not very cheap. So he doesn't have health insurance either. So please go out and check out the GoFundMe and donate whatever you can, or even support it and like it and share it. But while I say that, there's also a special guest joining us, Lavie.
Hello.
Yes. Hello,
Returning
Matt.
guest.
How are you?
I'm doing well, guys. Glad to be back on the show. Sorry about that. I had some day job stuff to handle. I sent an email. I forgot what time it was, and the link that Lavie sent me wasn't working because the internet hates me.
No worries. So, of course, one of our most prolific guests, and according to Grok, I think now moving up to number 4 in the rankings here. Of course, longtime promoter, performer, but now focused on historically speaking, but probably has some other projects as well. Matt, welcome back.
Thank you so much, guys. So glad to be here to talk about all the old school wrestling and money I've spent on books on Amazon. Lavie, I know you're going through that too, but the amount of time I've spent on newspapers.com recently. It's digital newsprint, but the ink is getting in my fingers. That's how much I've been in there lately.
Wow. So tell us about Historically Speaking. What's going on with it, and what's going on with all this research?
So yeah, a couple of years, like late 2024, I want to say I started Historically Speaking. It was a project I started a few years prior on the Matt Men YouTube channel, but I was trying to grow my own brand, as it were, on my YouTube channel. Matt Ryan is Yelling. And it first was a seasonal looks at one topic and trying to do a deep dive. I focused on the first national promotion, Eddie Einhorn's IWA, which ran in the mid 1970s, and the lore of that dated back to basically the start of modern TV wrestling in the 1940s and 50s. Carried a lot through Pedro Martinez, who was the promoter for the IWA. And a lot of interesting things there. Ivan Koloff making the jump from working for Crockett and McMahon to working for this outlaw promotion. They were trying to take over the world, but not the right time, not the right people, and it was in the midst of a whole bunch of NWA consolidation. Now I'm focusing on, individual stories, doing kind of pseudo deep dives. I've done a couple of videos this past summer, one about the original manager for Buddy Rogers and the original manager in pro wrestling. And it's been really fun to try to deep dive and find all these different assets and find all these different things that are within wrestling history and the things that people don't talk about. I call it secret wrestling history because it's finding the stuff that other places and other platforms may not want to spend the SEO capital on, but I genuinely find interesting.
So when you're doing the research, is it literally all through, you said, like newspapers and going through all that stuff?
I've got a litany of books here on my desk. Like I've got Master of the Ring by Tim Hornbaker. That was for my Bobby Davis video. Right now I'm covering the 1915 fall wrestling tournament, which took place at the Manhattan Opera House, which is now known as the Hammerstein Ballroom. And at one time fit 6,000 people. The capacity for the 1915 tournament was 6,000 people. So obviously the Hammerstein Ballroom, when it was the Manhattan Opera House, had a much bigger capacity. I think it was just like the Hammerstein and the Manhattan Center stacked on top of each other. I'm reading this book now by Ken Zimmerman Jr., Masked Marvel to the Rescue. It's a quick read. It's a very fast read. And if you want to learn about that era, he does a great job of it. But yeah, newspapers.com is a great resource because we don't have video footage of a lot of this era. We don't have a lot of marketing material on hand that's tangible from this era. There are people like Lavie who dig in the crates, and there are great resources on Facebook as well. Facebook historical groups, the modern extension of like the old wrestling legacy message boards. A lot of the great Google Drives that are out there that have copies of books or audio books or audio interviews, like the 57talk.com series from back in the day. Gary Cubetta. I hear Bix and Chris Zellner talk about him all the time on Between the Sheets. And those shows are a great resource as well. And shows like this, like we have to keep a living legacy of what this business is and it was, because all the trends we're seeing now were happening 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years ago, 110, 111 years ago. So trying to find those through lines, those starting points for us and how they kind of matter today, even though they may not seem like it within the zeitgeist.
When you're doing like Bobby Davis, for instance, do you know about that beforehand, or you're learning about it through like Tim Hornbaker or whoever?
Well, as a failed professional wrestling manager, obviously I know about Bobby Davis. I loved Bobby Davis. Actually, when we were doing some stuff around managers and Catalyst Wrestling, I used Bobby Davis in a couple of our video packages for social. But like learning the fact he was friends with Merle Haggard and made a bunch of money on Wendy's franchises, that was something I didn't know.
Wow.
Yeah, and that he was literally the first manager. Like he was the guy. There was one of the I can't remember his name right now because I have morning brain. Fargo, Don Fargo was the guy who taught Bobby Davis how to be a manager, got him his first flashy suit, got him his first promo photos. And this was in Ohio. This was in the Al Haft territory in Columbus. So you're not really thinking, oh, Columbus, Ohio, this rich thing of wrestling history, but it is. The Al Haft territory, and I talk about that in the IWA shows as well. The Midwest was a big breeding ground in Ohio itself. I think Ohio was the home of the original studio wrestling. So there's a lot of meat and a lot of gristle there that a lot of people don't talk about. And I try to find different ways, like how much someone made compared to like modern money. I love doing the CPI inflation calculator and trying to see how it equates to modern money on top of everything else.
What is the next big project you'll be working on?
Well, right now it's this. I'm working on basically the establishment of tropes in professional wrestling. So I'm going back all the way to 1865 in Paris, when during the Great Paris Exhibition, the first masked wrestler of any note came to light. And it was a sensation, not only in Europe, but in America. It got coverage in the New York Times. It got coverage from coast to coast, this wrestling tournament in Paris. And it shows how prevalent pro wrestling was in the culture, where that story reached from Paris all the way to the western part of California. Like little towns in and around San Jose, Mission, California. I think it was like Mission Viejo's newspaper. I'm about like 20 pages into the script on that. And usually my scripts run around 20 to 25 pages outside of like reenacting news articles or, doing silly voices and playing highlights, trying to integrate. One of the most recent videos I did as well was about the big Madison Square Garden riot in the mid 1950s, where Jerry Graham, Argentina Rocca, all that stuff, and all just the palace intrigue going on in pro wrestling, especially in New York, because at the time it was a dogfight between McMahon and all these other promoters, including Pedro Martinez, to control Madison Square Garden.
So I'm going to hand it over and give the hot tag, if you will, to Lavie Mar.
Yeah, and I'm just absorbing all the history, historically speaking. Love it. And I can confirm, as I'm deep in the research here, there was that one recording in New York by GE, sort of like in a studio, which was in wrestling.
It was in like Westchester or something. It was upstate.
Yeah, a little bit outside of Albany. The name is escaping me, although I should know it.
It might have been Utica, but I think I covered that in season 1 of Historically Speaking as well. But yeah, please, Lavie, continue.
Yeah, and 100% correct. But the first studio wrestling show, of course, was in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I'm like deep in that now because it's interesting. Like sometimes some media coverage was that like it's like a step up, like okay, like they're finally sort of like doing something big because it's like in a studio, and others was sort of like they have to be in a studio because it's affecting attendance. And you'll see even within the same day across the country, like we're like TV is helping pro wrestling become bigger than ever. And others, it's sort of like that they're struggling now. And it was really like the way that, as the way wrestling was marketed was like it's coming from this place, from like Grove Arena or whatever it may be. So really a fascinating thing, and I'm learning so much from it myself. But really what I wanted to start out with today was a more modern take as a promoter. I actually usually wear my Capital Wrestling t-shirt, although I forgot today. Setting up the chairs and second generation athletes, like let's not beat around the bush. What do you think about this Avery Styles story?
It's kind of a nothing story, to be honest with you. Like, I get the drama behind it, but each place is different. Each place has their own ring crew, and it comes down to a definition of paying your dues. I got into a conversation this morning with somebody about this. It depends on what you mean by paying your dues. If you mean by roughing it out on the indies for a few years before you get signed, doesn't mean you're learning the thing from the ground up. You're looking at it as a trade and you're trying to understand every facet of it. I think if those initial comments don't come out, or they're not, obfuscated in what really does paying your dues mean, it depends. It's situational. Like, I carried boards in. I helped set up rings when I was a 17th line announcer at Ring of Honor, or even, I've helped run ring crews. I've helped operate ring crews. I've helped rings set up and tear down in the rain as a promoter. Like, that's, it's situational. It's circumstantial. I don't fault anybody for feeling the way they do, because the meaning of it is transitive from person to person. And I think that a lot of people on the internet just wanted to get in on the argument. But I don't know. I'm outside of the loop on that. But I think it depends on where you're working, what the situation is, and what the expectations are. If the expectations are set that if you're paying your dues, that means help setting up the ring, help setting up chairs, doing some scut work in the back, being a part of the community, or that just means grinding it out, learning literally between the ropes and doing it that way. I don't think it's this George Goulas, daddy said sail kind of thing, but I think it's just the intention and the language that we use in pro wrestling. And what does that mean in 2026 as juxtaposed to 25 years ago, when the industry and the things surrounding the industry were a little more closed off and a little more sheltered. And he's a second generation guy. What does that mean? Like, if he was a promoter's son and it's his promotion, then if it was AJ Styles Championship Wrestling, then it might be a different conversation, because you would be more invested in setting up the rings and setting up the chairs because it's your business. But he's a guy hired to go to a show to do a thing. And if those expectations aren't set out ahead of time, or if he doesn't know, or he doesn't understand what paying your dues means within that context, then we're just yelling at a 19-year-old kid for no real reason. Like, I think a lot of the backlash was just, a miscommunication and a misunderstanding of what paying your dues means in the modern context. But I'm not the one to answer that. Wasn't my show, wasn't my ring, thank God. So I don't mean to be political about it. I feel like we're taking it a little too seriously, but I can see why people were pissed and on both sides of it.
Yeah, that sounds fair. I think like for me, and there's so many talents that came out of your promotional efforts, but and he was a little bit older and had actually publicly overcome some things and was in a different place. Like Colby Carino, the son of Steve Carino, like was really one of your top stars and certainly highlighted with the continuing the ongoing feud with Homicide. Did you think about Colby differently because he was second generation? Would there be like different expectations for him?
Not really, no, but because Colby grew up building rings, going to shows with his dad, doing stuff like that. He runs his own school, he runs his own promotion. So it's like, I really don't know how to think about that. Like or I have Ron Bash Jr., who's a second generation guy. I've had a few second generation guys come through Catalyst when we were, fully operational. It's just dependent. And if we needed help, and I was like, hey, Colby, you know how to build a fucking ring? I need help. Help me put boards up. They would be fine with it. But yet again, different circumstances and a different kid altogether.
Cool. So in terms of reflecting back, and I think we had connected in terms of having long discussions and mostly Facebook chats and so on. It was like post that Flow era. So the Flow craziness, and that era where there was, Triller, but there was also like all these like streaming services that were like coming to you and being like, hey, do you want a channel or whatever it may be?
Yeah.
Like, and things have settled in a different way. So like, reflecting back on like what streaming has been, maybe I know it's a lot, like the last 10 years, but like, where do you see it as today and how have things changed?
Well, I think that streaming has never been easier for a promoter to do it on their own. I think that a lot of the reasons why Triller and all these other groups that were fly by night or not fly by night, they had the equipment, they had the financing, they had the means of production. Now promoters can just go on YouTube and they can hire a crew for X amount of money or invest X amount of dollars into something and run it as their own. I think that my AEW is a great alternative for a lot of companies. One of my biggest issues with Triller was and this is not just as a wrestling promoter. When I was producing football, we had a partnership with Triller. And I was like, why are we pushing out 720 instead of 1080? Why are we not showing the full scale of our production? And that comes down to server space and server size. And, they have these outlets in Bulgaria. And I'm talking to dudes on WhatsApp while I'm about to produce and host a live football game. So there's a little bit of fakaktiness there. I think things are settling now, and I think there's a different risk tolerance, if that makes any sense. Like now investing in yourself on YouTube might be a smarter play. It's all about where you are as a company, where you want to invest your time, your money, and your energy. If you don't want to think about, I got to sell X amount of pay-per-views, I've got to do this and this, I have to hire get such and such cameras. If you just want to offload that to somebody else and just offload it to a service, then that's easier for you. But I think that a lot of companies make a lot of investment in trying to be a pay-per-view product. And I'm not sure I think we're seeing a lot of territorial style companies come up again and people trying to stake their claims to different parts of the map. Like we're seeing that a lot here in New York. I think Produce is trying to do that with, my old territories of Brooklyn and Jersey City, and good luck to them. But I think that, companies like GCW have always been ahead of the curve and have always had a good understanding and a good relationship with their content partners until they don't. But that's just the nature of business. I've been in the same boat as them numerous times, which is why I'm giving takes instead of running shows. But I think it's leveled out a little bit. I think you're going to see some smaller companies stick to YouTube, some of them probably Facebook. I think Twitch was a squandered opportunity on both sides, because I think that both sides didn't understand the true potential of either thing. And Twitch was still figuring out what it was in terms of IRL streaming and not just gaming streaming. Now I think there's a bit more of a level ground for them. But wrestling's always been first through the door on everything. And then you end up finding your level or assimilating to what everybody else is doing, which is why the WWE are on Netflix and ESPN now and not on their own service for $9.99 a month. They were like, oh, let's take the easy money instead of all this infrastructure money, which is more of my issue with the business at large, but that's just my opinion.
So I think, one of the most interesting situations right now is House of Glory in terms of transitioning from Triller, not committing themselves to my AEW. So if Master P called you, Matt, and was like, hooty hoo, what?
I need someone to clip that. And I need that as a ringtone for the rest of my life. Because that made my Friday. That made my Friday.
And he was like, can you help me? Can you help me, Matt? What should I do with my distribution? Like, how would you advise him?
I think House of Glory has a lot of good things going for them. Obviously, they have access to some of the best talent in the world, like Kyle Fletcher and Amazing Red in LA is going to be an amazing match. Kyle's a star. He's the future, if not the president of the business. They own their own building, or at least have control over their own building. Back when I was working at House of Glory, we were double booked with bachata concerts. So we had to, I'm in the main event or I'm working commentary. As soon as the show is done, I have to run to my merch table, pack that bitch up, and then run to the Long Island Railroad because there's a line out the building for a club show. But now there's a little less of that for them. So good on Brian and Red for getting that settled. I think if Master P, if he is in charge, gave me a call, I'd say upgrade your cameras, because I for whatever reason, the House of Glory shows never look as crisp as I think they could be, and I think that could be with the lights or whatever. I would focus on developing a fuller show. The live experience, the crowds at that building are lunatics. I've gotten my hair pulled. I've gotten almost in the fights. I've had people talk an immense amount of garbage while I was on the other side of the guardrail. I think trying to exhibit that and focus on that. And I would suggest maybe YouTube or Twitch because you can make more direct revenue. My AEW would be an interesting pivot, but I think there are things that limit House of Glory from doing that. I think it would just be, do you want to be a part of a system that can help build and grow your talent and your brand? Or do you want to stand on the power of your brand and be independent? And be the ones who are saying, no, we're going to set the tone. We're going to do our own thing. We want to exist in our own bubble, in our own space, which is what House of Glory historically has done. Because I know that they were looking at other things going back to 2017, 2018, when Flow and Fight and all these different platforms were popping up. But for me, House of Glory has a really good thing going. I think it's just a matter of really cementing who they are. Are they this new PWG? Are they this traveling road show? Are they competing with a GCW? Or are they just existing on their own fans and in their own space? Because that'll answer your question about whether do we want to stay with Triller, stay independent, stay on YouTube, or go to a platform like My AEW, or there's a mysterious player that comes in the frame and tries to say, we're going to be owning the sports space, and we want to get these independent wrestling companies on there, which is less likely, but they might be holding out hope for that.
Let me turn over to John.
So where can everybody find and follow Historically Speaking? Where can everybody find and follow you and you yelling?
You can find me yelling on the Matt Ryan is Yelling YouTube channel throughout the NFL preseason and the NFL regular season. I'll be hosting NFL Altcasts thanks to my friends over at the Creator Sports Network. Just got 2,800 viewers last night for the Raiders and the Cardinals. Watching my Raiders get their asses kicked by the Cardinals is always fun. But you can also subscribe to Matt Ryan is Yelling on YouTube for Historically Speaking, every single episode of our first season about the lovely history of the IWA and also history of New York City radio. I got started on that. There's some other videos on there about secret football history. So we've got a variety of stuff, but you can catch up on our most recent videos. But if you want them without YouTube having the copyright strike demon, and you want to see all the footage, all the stuff, and get, insight and all my notes, I put every single thing I research, every single piece of research in the show notes. So whether it's video on YouTube or on my Patreon, patreon.com/historically speaking, that's patreon.com/historically speaking. You get all the videos, you get all the content, you get it, no copyright problems. You get it the way to see it. I want to do it while manically editing in Adobe Premiere at 2 o'clock in the morning. You can get that at patreon.com/historically speaking. Or if you just love my voice and you want the sound of a somewhat nasal, dying New York accent, you can find Historically Speaking wherever you get podcasts.
Nice. Matt, thank you so much for joining us again. Appreciate it.
Appreciate y'all. Have a great morning.
Thanks,
You
Matt.
too.
Take care.
Thank you, Matt. All right, Lavie, let's wrap it up and then head towards the finish here. And let's head towards the plugs. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2manpowertrip. How about you, Lavie?
Yeah, follow me on X, Lavie Marg, LAVIE MARG. Check out my long form articles, LionCubJobSearch.com. Buy my books on Amazon, Ultimate Fighters and Trump Mania, and join our LinkedIn group, The Business of the Business. And of course, as you mentioned mid-show, John, please support Joe Feeney and his health challenges right now in the ICU.
Crazy stuff there. Hopefully, Joe, get better soon. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for the Business of the Business. See you next week, folks.